She went to bed with a nice view of the green courtyard next door, but the next day she was woken up by the sound of her new neighbor drilling a few holes in the floor. It wasn't her property, and she hated sticking her nose where it wasn't wanted. All they could do was watch the events play out. It could have been anything. Maybe a problem with the septic tank, pest infestation. Jill Thompson was standing by her bedroom window, scratching her head as more holes appeared in her neighbor's yard. What has he done? She was tempted to find out what he was up to, but when she saw him digging dirt out of the floor with his bare hands, she was too scared to even ask. Jill hadn't met the man in person yet, even though she waved at him from across the street when she saw him move in. But the holes he bored in the floor of his yard made her very suspicious. One morning, an old rusty truck drove to the man's property. Jill and a few other curious residents watched the lawn parcels unload from the vehicle. What was he doing over there? A few days later, Jill discovered that the shipment was several wooden posts. He built something. The posts protruded from the holes in a strange formation like a kind of Druid monument, which puzzled Jill and the other onlookers. Then they noticed a new addition to the construction team who caught their eye. As the hardworking man continued to work on the strange project, a little boy came out of the house and came to him. It must be his son, Jill said to the other neighbors, but the question still remained. What were they doing in the backyard that needed so many holes and wooden posts? The neighbors were all mesmerized by what was going on in the man's backyard now. They watched as the young man got materials and tools for the man. The boy was certainly eager to make the project a reality. He even picked out weeds and carried some large stones in his tiny hands. It was a very sweet sight to see the miniature worker in action, but still no answers. At this point, it almost seemed a shame to ask what they were building as it became a hot topic in the neighborhood, guessing what the father-son duo were working on. With the wooden posts now standing upright, like fluted wooden soldiers, a huge pile of gravel that appeared in the man's courtyard continued to confuse the curious residents. But they got a clearer idea of what was going on. It seemed that the man and his son had been working on the foundations for some kind of structure. But for what? Not much happened on her sleepy suburban street, and Jill loved to theorize what was being built. How big would it be with such strong foundations? Would it ruin the well-kept neighborhood aesthetic? It didn't take long for more wood and building materials to arrive in the house, and it became clearer that the man was building something ambitious. But it wasn't just nails, screws, hooks, and mounting brackets that arrived on the property. Some new faces also appeared. But who were they, and why did he need so much help? Jill and her neighbors heard a lot of excitement from the yard as more workers piled up. Soon the structure appeared to be at least halfway through. They couldn't wait to find out what it was. Now the project was really taking shape, and Jill could see some very specific features that gave clues as to what the end result would be. More recognizable elements of the structure emerged, a floor and a staircase. Now it was taking shape. Further clues coincided, and the puzzle became more complete. Was it a little warehouse? It turned out that the man and his team knew what they were doing, but what was the end goal? Autumn had come. The children were preparing to go back to school, and the leaves turned from green to beautiful browns and reds. The project was still ongoing. It was enough of it that Jill finally knew what was going on, however, and they were all very excited. Maybe they could all share this. Then came the bad news. Just as Jill and her neighbors thought the project was finally going to be revealed, the man had put down his tools and supplies and covered everything up. As the weather grew colder and construction became more difficult, it looked like he would have to wait until next spring to complete his months of work. Fast forward to the next spring, and the man had finally started again. He peeled back the weathered tarpaulin, took out his tools, and took out the rest of the area took on the familiar noises of hitting, drilling, and sawing. By summer, they would finally see what it was. Since moving in, the man and his family had enjoyed an above-ground pool for a while, but getting on and off the thin ladder was not only awkward, but also dangerous for their son. The father had decided that enough was enough, and they needed a new deck for easier access. How did his DIY skills develop? The end result was something breathtaking. A professional contractor couldn't have done a better job. A year of wondering what they saw was over. Jill and her neighbors were really impressed. Sturdy beams held the floor in place, the seams were met perfectly, the angles were carefully measured, and all the edges were beveled for decoration. As if that wasn't enough, the family added some fine-tuning to make something out of a magazine. A layer of sealer has been added to protect it from adverse weather and keep it pristine for years. They also added a number of gray and brown lounge chairs and tables, so they could lay in the sun after a cool dip. Jill took notes. She had learned a thing or two from seeing this DIY project in action. A project like this is not to be taken lightly. A lot of people think they can nail a few boards together and bring something like this to their knees in a few months. But that couldn't be further from the truth. You need time. It also requires a lot of expertise and practice, as well as learning from mistakes. But there is some good news for budding home improvement. If you build yourself small repairs around the house, you can save a lot of money. For example, a plumber costs hundreds, but replacing your own toilet pump costs less than $1.50. Painting your own walls is another cheap project that you can do yourself that will get great results. But DIY is more than just saving money. It's no secret that it takes great pride in achieving something yourself, especially when you can look back on your creation every day. Start with small things and slowly move on to bigger things. There is an enormous amount of free information out there. In time, you could build your own luxury deck, even your own pool.